right, good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Davis, and I'm happy to moderate this wonderful evening. We're going to talk about the student athlete during the time of COVID, and Ethos is bringing this to you, and I'm going to moderate. I'm going to introduce you to our panelists in just a moment to take you through our topics tonight. I'm glad all of you could join us. Just know this, Ethos Village comes from an old African saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and we've all heard that one, haven't we? This is a platform that allows us to come together as a community to strategize how we can better pour into our children and respective families all that wisdom. We use the generational wisdom from the village to help our children redefine their mental paradigm around identity, purpose, vision, and values. The Ethos Village platform was created by our nonprofit called Ethos Education Group. Ethos was founded in 2012 by Tim Brown, Everson Walls, and Michael Davis, and it's our goal to have monthly webinars to discuss issues we feel are important to our communities and families. Our hope is that we can motivate others to be a part of this village and to continue to have all these important conversations. Again, it takes all of us, as we well know, in the village to raise a child.
Megan.
Once again, I'm Charles Davis. I'm going to moderate this, and let me tell you about our distinguished panel that we have here tonight. Mr. Tim Brown, NFL Hall of Famer, Ethos partner. Everson Walls, future NFL Hall of Famer, should have been already, Ethos partner. Coach Jay Hayes, NFL and XFL coach. Actually, Coach Michael was Michael Davis's coach at UC Berkeley. He also coached at Notre Dame, Wisconsin before coaching in the NFL and the XFL, and part of an incredible family of educators and athletes. Also with us tonight is Dr. Scott Brooks, the associate professor at Arizona State University and the director of the Global Sports Institute there. And he went to school with Michael Davis at UC Berkeley. That's a loaded class, I got to tell you. Finally, Michael Davis, Canadian football player, UC Berkeley grad, founder and executive director of Ethos and Genesis Financial, a graduate at Berkeley of the Haas Business School and Northeastern University, where he got his MBA. So as you can tell, this panel is flat out loaded, and thank goodness for that. And as I said before, thank you all for joining us. Appreciate you keeping everything on mute until it's time. But we're going to jump into a bunch of topics. And as we said, student athletes during COVID. And there's so many things that we're covering here. And let's face it, we're seeing it across the country. And in a quick snapshot, the Power 5 football conferences did not all get together and make a decision to do things the exact same way. We have two that are currently not playing football: Pac-12, Big Ten. SEC, ACC, and Big 12 all made decisions to go ahead and play. As I understand it, there was almost an emergency. I don't even know if it's called an emergency, but another meeting of the Big Ten athletic directors and chancellors to talk about trying to play this fall. Let's dive in here. The Pac-12 student athletes letter to the commissioner about boycotting games based on their safety surrounding COVID-19 and social economic injustice before the decision was made to not have a season. I think that it had some relevance and some resonance. And Michael Davis, let me start with you, having been a former Pac-12 player. What did you think when you saw these youngsters coming together and talking to us old folks about their concerns? Because I can just tell you, all of us ex-football players, I don't know when we were playing that we would have all gotten together like that and said, hey, we've got some concerns. Our concern was whether or not we get to practice that day. Michael, what do you think? Unmute yourself and please address everyone.
Yeah, thank you, man. I was really proud when I first saw that. I was proud to be a Pac-12 dude, well, Pac-12 now, Pac-10 back then, that they really stepped up and said, hey, my identity has a lot more value than what it is that you're laying this thing out to be. I'm much more than just this athlete. I understand I make a lot of money, but most importantly, I'm a student. And so they were addressing some of the conflicts between the position of being a student versus being an athlete. And I think I love their courage to be able to step up and really address those issues. Because back in the day, we probably wouldn't have done it either when I played, because of some of the backlash that probably would have happened if it would have came out and said something like that. So I was really proud to see that happen.
You know, Coach Jay Hayes, you're in the coaching profession, and you were a player as well. You remember what it's like as a player, but I think you've seen the spectrum broaden in terms of athletes having voices that you actually have to listen to. Because I remember many a time having some concerns, and Coach kind of looked at me and said, "Practice at 3:30." That's the end of the conversation.
For sure, Charles. I was surprised when that all transpired and players came together to do that. Michael will tell you, when we were together at Cal, they questioned a lot of things, and Tim can attest to this, having coached at Notre Dame before I went to Cal. It was a totally different world when I walked onto the Berkeley campus away from South Bend. It was, you know, guys saying yes sir, no sir, to people just being very into their own thing. And my players at Cal used to tell me, "You don't know what it's like here." and you know, I think that hasn't changed. In the Pac-10, you have some guys that are very enlightened in their process of how they're going about being student athletes. It's for the better of college athletics, I think. You know, in my day back, you know, I started college in 1978 before most of these guys were even thought about. And so, you know, we, like you say, all I did was I'd go to school, go to practice, make sure I was doing the right thing so that no one took my scholarship from me. And, you know, that was the thing my parents stressed to me. You know, my dad would say to me, "Hey, boy, don't be out there wasting my money." And I'd say, "Dad, I'm on scholarship." He goes, "I don't care." You know, but you know, now in these days and times, you have to speak up for yourself. You have to make sure that what you want in society is happening, and you can't be afraid to step out from under the cloak of the NCAA or the school you play for and speak your mind. If you're right, you know, you need to be right in the things that you bring up.
And trying to pull that all together, not easy, because so many times we were told how wrong we were. Dr. Brooks, I want you to hang in there for me, because I want to come back to Tim and Everson. I want you to tie it all up for me, because you're in the Pac-12 now. All right, you're around all of this, and I bet you have a unique perspective. But Tim, Notre Dame guy, you know, the outside world looks at Notre Dame as a different place because of the stance and the stature that it's had in the college football world, in the academic world, in all of that. When you saw this out at the Pac-12, you know, these players coming together across the conference, you know, again, Notre Dame was an independent deal, but still, how did you feel? What were your thoughts, and how did it relate to back when you played?
You know, I think the timing was perfect for them to do what they did. You know, March 7th, I was in San Francisco at an autograph session with 50 other players, you know, with 500 people in the building. March 10th, we were on a national shutdown, you know. So, you know, if this would have happened in March, then I think people probably would have been questioning them. But the fact of the matter, if you're not asking these questions nowadays, then there's something wrong with you. I mean, I've heard a couple of NFL players say, "I'm going to play, I'll die for this," you know. Well, I mean, that's just ridiculous to make those kind of comments. So I think it was smart on these young folks to get together and to say, "Hey, you know, is this really worth it, or can we do this safely?" And I think that's what everybody's trying to figure out right now. Can this be done safely? I don't think they even know, even though they played a game or two. I don't think people realize at this point if it can be done safely. You hear the announcers all weekend say, if we can finish the season, if we can finish the season, because nobody really knows. So this is a serious thing that's going on. And I think we're finding out more and more every day how serious people knew it was, way back when. I think this is just something that you have to ask a question, because what I've said all along is this is all good until an older coach gets it and ends up passing away, and now you got a problem that you can't ever fix if you're the NFL or if you're college football. So I think everybody has to be smart about it. These young folks, I'm sure everybody else, what happened at the Big Ten and Pac-12. You see these other conferences playing, but I think the decisions not to play is just as good a decision as to play because of maybe what was going on those campuses.
Everson, you came from the place that was kind of the mecca in black college football, when you're talking about one of them anyway, and talk about Grambling and forefront leaders and everything in the college football world. When you saw this happen, did you think to yourself, man, back in the old SWAC, if we could have gotten together, called my guys at Jackson State and, Mississippi Valley and the whole deal, could we have pulled this off? But here we are now in 2020. These youngsters, as Jay Hayes was saying, they're speaking up, believing that they're right, and they don't seem to be as worried about repercussions.
Well, when you start looking at the HBCUs versus the Power Fives, of course, it's a totally different conversation, Charles. First of all, just like society itself, Black people, brown people are more adversely affected by it. So consequently, we couldn't even afford to think about having a season, all Black college football or sports for the fall, just shut down. And it really had nothing to do with how much it was spreading. It was totally from an economic standpoint. So let's just be real about where we're coming from as HBCUs. I do believe that they sent out the notice about a schedule in the spring. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that's going to end up working out, about another year and a half from now, how we're going to work back into the fall cycle. But I'm just glad that they did come to some conclusion.
And Everson, when you talk about the economics, you're talking about the daily testing that we're seeing in the NFL, what the Power Five conferences are doing in terms of testing, administering. Look, I'll just tell you straight up, as a broadcaster, I have to be tested when I get on site for my game each weekend. But that's just me. When these teams are practicing, playing, at a minimum, the NFL, they're testing every day. I think the Power Five conferences are like every other day or every 2 days. So is that where you were going with that, with the economics?
I mean, that as well. And also the fact that no enrollment at all. Yeah. That really affects it as well. So anything that upsets our balancing act in regards to our budget, which all HBCUs have to deal with, way more than what Power Five schools have to deal with. That's something that is unique just to us alone. And you talk about these young men that they have at this day and age. I have to laugh because I was a union man back in '87. Really back in '82, my mom made sure that I attended a conference. I was 22 years old, didn't know what the heck a union was about. She made me go to the Players Association meeting in Albuquerque that particular year. And from then on, I was always that guy that fought for others. It's just the way we were brought up. Jay knows about it. I'm sure as Jay was growing up, he saw the Martin Luther King films. He saw where, we were just taught to not be selfish. And when it came to a cause, if that cause was good for the people, then yeah, we need to at least be accepting towards it. So that was kind of what I was about growing up. And in the 80s, we just didn't have these kind of athletes. We were afraid. And when I say we, I lost a lot of nice friends as teammates because I tried to challenge them to be more like these guys. So when I look at what's going on now, I always sit back and I tell my wife, boy, if I had these kids now, like I had back in the 80s, man, we could have made some things happen a lot sooner than they already did. So I love what they're doing. I love what the Pac-12 kids are doing. And, you know, when it comes down to it, they were taught by our generation because we were the ones that were always trying to get things to happen, the frustration of not making it happen. And now those kids saw our frustration and they're making things happen because they saw how we sacrificed for what we did.
Dr. Brooks, help us all tie this thing up. You're there in the Pac-12. You teach at a Pac-12 institution. Did you have any fear for these kids? Because what Everson and Tim and Jay and Michael have been talking about has been the fear of loss of scholarship, loss of opportunity. Our parents saying, are you crazy? This is a great spot, right? But Jay was saying, don't waste my money. I'm on scholarship. Yeah, but if you lose scholarship, then it's my money. So that's where it all comes together. But did you have any fear for these kids, or did you know that this is a different time? And how's it been received across these Pac-12 institutions about these youngsters coming together?
Yeah, no, I didn't have any fear, and I'd say, you know, to be fair, Everson and Tim, you know, I don't think that it's a failure of past athletes. I think this is the coming together. So when you look at the 60s, you know, and my mentor, also Professor Mike Davis's professor, Harry Edwards, he wrote the book, right, The Revolt of the Black Athlete. And what he talked about was what was going on at the time. And so as black folks were protesting in the 60s, it created a community, right, that was saying that we weren't going to take this anymore. And that's what we've got now, right? So you have to put everything's got to go in its proper time and its context. I was at the University of Missouri in 2015 when the football team decided to stand up and say that they would boycott no football activities until the president of the system stepped down. That wasn't simply the football players. What was unique there was the football players were standing for something that was happening on campus. And Concerned Student 1950 was reflecting on how in 1950, first of all, was the first black was admitted into Missouri. And then in 68, you had a student, basically the student union, that put together a list of here are the problems, here are the ways in which we're still excluded. They wanted more faculty, they wanted more counselors and the like. And they looked at that in 2015 and said, this list, we could create the same list today. Nothing has changed. And so what was unique was that wasn't about what was going on throughout the whole country. Those football players stood right there with their students. And they understood that what was happening on campus was also happening to them, that there wasn't this separation. So I'd like to take folks back to 2015 because when that team, 30 black players, stood together, that helped to set the stage for teams to stand together. And what we see now is teams, conferences are coming together. And you can go back before that in the brothers at Northwestern trying to start a union and, you know, player at Arizona. So this has been growing, but it's all within a whole environment that you're looking at the LeBron Jameses of the world who stand up and say, we're not going to just stand still. They're willing to speak to the highest level of government to say these things are not right. You're looking at what's going on with Black Lives Matter, of course. Go back to Eric Garner. Look at what was happening in the NFL. Look at the WNBA. One of the things that people don't realize about the Pac-12 is you had women on the women's soccer teams kneeling when Kaepernick was kneeling in 2016. Right? Havana McIlvaine, the University of Washington, and several black women were kneeling on soccer fields in predominantly white sports with predominantly white coaches. And so what we're seeing is just how this has continued to grow. And so the time period does a lot. When you have that movement, then these athletes are not standing by themselves. They know that they're on the right side because people are out here in the streets. And so if people are out here in the streets, there isn't a question of what's going on. And that puts more force behind them. at the University of Missouri, and many people have already forgotten about what happened in 2015 because there wasn't everything else going on around the country. It stands as somewhat of an isolated incident, and what we know is when brothers get treated as troublemakers, you know, they can get swept into that natural attrition that happens season to season in football. And I know at Missouri, there are some brothers who were vocal, and if they weren't the star players, they just kind of disappeared into the to the ether, right? Folks don't know what happened to them, but they were deemed as troublemakers, and sure enough, there wasn't a spot for them. So I think we got to put it all in its full context to be fair historically. When you have the movement going on, it gives that force for the people to feel stronger. You're not standing out there on your own, and the organizations have to respond to the social consciousness.
Real quick follow-up, Dr. Brooks. Back in 2015, what I thought was extremely significant, because it wasn't the norm that we're seeing today.
Yep.
Is that these players were actually backed by their head coach.
Right.
In other places, that would not have been the case. Go back to Wyoming, where the players protested and the head coach was like, well, you guys can hit the bricks, and they were gone. Yeah. And they went from number 6 in the country and didn't make a bowl game. My point, not the football, and I'm not trying to turn Gary Pinkel into a saint, but that was extremely unusual in 2015. Am I right?
You are, and you know he walked most of that back.
Yeah, that right? I know. He was there initially.
But yeah, then, he walked it back before.
Then the pressures came in, of course.
And that's the point, right? The pressure, if you don't have that social pressure.
I just remember the beginning, Dr. Brooks, I was like, is that Gary?
Yeah, right. And Gary and the athletic director, right? Mac Rhodes at the time. Yep. They both stood right there and said, we're there. Now, again, it was split. The chancellor at the school and the president of the system, they actually talked about feeling bamboozled. That's what the president of the system said. Essentially, he said, we didn't handle this right. This should have been a teaching lesson. What does that mean, right? We were supposed to manage them. We were supposed to keep them in line. And Pinkel stood out there. And so you got to give him credit. He lost his job for that, right? He still made money at the side, but he lost the job, had to retire. Mac Rhodes, right? And Mac Rhodes went to Baylor. And we all know what Baylor was in. Mac Rhodes said, I'd rather go to Baylor and everything that's happening in Baylor than to stay here with this.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brooks. Let's give a contrast then, guys. All right. The Pac-12 made their decision not to play. And frankly, I'm sitting in the state of Florida, and I haven't heard too many peeps about it. You know, people got the decision, the schools got together, the players seem to, I'm not going to say understand, because as a player, you want to play. I get all of that. But that decision was made. Haven't heard much about it. The Big Ten, oh my goodness. They make the decision, and then all of a sudden the vote wasn't right, and all of a sudden this. They've got a black commissioner for the first time in Big Ten history, first year. And they're not standing behind him being the front man. We all know the chancellors did the vote. He's the front man. And then we have the parents who want their kids to play, protesting, delivering a letter to Indianapolis saying, let us play. Tim Brown, I'm going to start with you. When you saw that with the contrast, what were your thoughts about what these parents are doing? I know they're trying to do it in the best interest of their kids, but this is COVID, this is this, and all of a sudden, it was like it shouldn't be happening.
Hey, I'm one of those parents, brother. I have a 17-year-old son who's a senior in high school right now, who decided that he wanted to play football this year, didn't play last year, played a little bit his freshman and sophomore year, but he definitely wanted to play this year. And, they tried to get together in June and had to shut it down because you had 4 or 5 kids that come down with COVID. And so I actually kept him out until mid-July. And so they've had a couple kids to come down with COVID. So they're going to school 2 days a week, and they're home 2 days a week. Wednesday is sort of a catch-up day for everybody. But it's scary, man. It really is, because we have my wife's mother lives with us. She has all those things that they talk about that you should have. And if something comes in this house, it's going to be problematic, man. So Timmy knows that if something goes down again and the school shuts down, then his football season unfortunately is going to be over. And I'm sad for him. His sister, his twin sister, is a cheerleader. Same goes for her. If this thing gets shut down, then unfortunately your senior year, as far as football season, is over. And it's a very difficult thing, man, because you want to push it, but at the same time, you got to be careful, because this thing is deadly enough that the crazy thing about this disease is the asymptomatic part of it. You got people who can walk in your house and not have, any symptoms, but have it and leave it here, and you got problems, man. So, from that standpoint, you have to be extremely careful about what's happening. We're struggling day by day, man, because, he's at a school where there's only nine African Americans. Emmett Smith's son, graduated from there last year. And the other side of the town like to party a little bit. Let's just put it that way. And party without masks. And so it's a big problem, man. And so far so good. The first couple of weeks, and they got a game coming up in about 10 days. So hopefully we can get through that and go from there.
Everson, do you understand these parents and how they were feeling when their season got canceled and their kids were not going to be able to play this fall? We're talking about the Big Ten specifically when we saw the parents out there. Do you have, as a parent yourself, did you understand where they were coming from? But what were your thoughts overall? Unmute yourself, please, sir. There we go.
Well, thank God my kids are out of school. We don't really have to deal with that, but I do have nephews that have to go through that, very young nephews that are dealing with that right now. And so what we try and do as the older generation, we're trying to make sure that they stay healthy. So our bubble shrinks a little bit in regards to our family, because, we want to make sure that they stay as insulated as possible from everything that's going on. When it comes to football, I couldn't believe that they even were able to start any football this fall. If you would have asked me 2 months ago, I was the guy that was saying the NFL nor high school or college football should be played. That's basically what my stance was. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was one of the happiest people this weekend because I was able to watch the sports. So I haven't said all of that. I wanted to view it. I do miss it. But I have a little vested interest in it from a personal standpoint. And so I understand what Tim's going through. I've watched it from afar. And to me, when I sit up at night, and sometimes I just talk to my wife about what a unique situation that we are all going through in this world. It's an extremely odd situation, not just scary, but just scary in an odd way, to where we've got people reacting in some very non-traditional ways. No one wants to sacrifice for the other, and it's really showing the soul of this country. It really does come down to that. And the way that we see ourselves treating our kids, to me, is just a reflection of what our real priorities are. Are we having our kids playing because we think it's good for them, or do we want them to continue and go back to school under this threat when we know that they could die? Let's just be real about that. They could die. And if not them, then obviously they could bring it back home to those same parents, and now you've got some issues. So that's just the kind of thing that I am not accustomed to, and it scares me. And I'm so glad that I don't have a child that has to deal with that. And I do feel for guys like Tim who have to deal with things in this nature.
Dr. Brooks, it's not a direct contrast what we saw with the the Pac-12 and the players voicing their concerns, because they were voicing their concerns, as I understood it, in order to, if we're going to play, let's make sure we're doing it safely. It wasn't that they were trying to shut it down. They just wanted to be safe. Now we have the Big Ten parents out there. I don't think that they're saying they don't want their kids safe, but they really want their kids to play. Yeah. What were your thoughts and your views in seeing kids on one part of the country doing it and the parents on the other part of the country?
Well, you know, in many ways, I think it reflects back to how our country really is segmented. So, you know, when we talk about the last election, I'm a Californian. I'm from Oakland, grew up watching Timmy religiously, right, as a Oakland guy. And the California is an island. It is not like the Midwest, right? It's not like Big Ten country. It is very different. So I wasn't shocked by the fact that parents might be thinking about this thing differently than Californians and the West Coast might be thinking about it. When you look at what the Pac-12 athletes said, there was more about we are united around being exploited, around sharing, around name, image, and likeness. I mean, they had a list of things. It was not just about the virus. It was more about the context of sport and the question, right? So what they reflected was a deep distrust of the institution, right, of college sport right now. And so they're saying, can we trust organizations that we believe are just out here for the money? And that's a very different stand than being in the Big Ten. And parents are saying, here is what we're thinking is going on with the virus, and we want, you know, we either believe that this is safe or not as bad as what you're saying. There's still maybe some distrust, but they're not out at looking at this in terms of that exploitation. So I think they're two very different things, and they just happen to be on the different sides, right? But to your point, the Pac-12 athletes, if we take what they said seriously, if they believe that this could be done safely, that's only part of it for them. The Big Ten, it was about safety and saying, hey, we believe that testing is telling us that this is safe, that this is safer than them being at home. And I think that's another question, right? There's a question about when you have these young people and they're out, are student athletes safer than just being students? Not necessarily at home, but let's talk about student athletes safer than being students. And we know that student athletes are probably safer than being students. They are closely monitored. We're making sure that they've got health checks. We make sure of all these kinds of things that students don't necessarily have to pay as much attention to. But that doesn't mean, right, because these student athletes are still having to interact with students when they're on campus, if the students are there, you know, that doesn't mean that this is still the ideal situation. So I think it's really a struggle. I've got a 23-year-old son who played community college basketball for 2 years, didn't make it to the D1 level. But I thought of, well, you know, what would I be saying right now? Would I be in favor of him playing? And I have to tell you, I think football, in some ways, I think football is safer. And this is me not going to the science, but just thinking of the padding, the layers there. Everyone isn't touching the ball on every occasion. Basketball, that ball is moving. They're touching the ball on every occasion. It would be a really tough decision. So I echo Everson. I don't envy a parent who has to think about it. You know, you've got kids who are saying, or people who are thinking that these parents are selling their kids out like they're just in it for the money. I worried about athletes and their mental health when the pandemic started, right? At the Institute, I was asking questions. I got that we have to worry about the safeties of athletes, but I also asked, mental health is an issue too. And if you're an athlete and your career came to an abrupt end, and we say athletes die 2 deaths, how is that impacting those athletes? These athletes who need sport. Think about our kids, particularly from the inner city. They need sport to go to school. This is their impetus to kind of follow that particular path, to stay inspired and motivated. When we don't have sport, we're also jeopardizing their mental health. And coaches at the college level, how many of them are equipped via Zoom to tell whether or not their athlete is in good health mentally? Right? So there's a struggle there. This is a very complicated issue.
Dr. Brooks, it's hard to do in person if you don't have the expertise and the training, let alone Zoom. And among your comments, I'm going to let those take us in another direction. But real quick, guys, there have been some questions that have come up. I just want kind of a yay or a nay. The NFL being able to play and operate right now versus the colleges and the struggles that we've seen operating? Money driven? Is that kind of an agreement? Money driven, being able to do the testing, kind of form their mini bubble, those sorts of things, as opposed to a number of colleges having issues. Would that be on point? Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of nods there. So let me take it to that would be the thing. So let me take it to the mental health side. Michael Davis. Dr. Brooks just brought up something that is relevant, pertinent, that we never would have discussed before. We just had a national sports commentator criticize the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys for discussing mental health issues during COVID, brought on by COVID, that he expressed himself and talked about he should be tougher than that. We all heard that when we were younger. You didn't bring mental health issues to your coaches, to your teams. Where are we now, Michael Davis? Dr. Brooks brought it up. This is real with these kids. What have you seen during this time frame, and how do we help them?
Scott, Dr. Brooks said, exactly right. I totally agree with what he's saying in regards to identity crisis, which I think is the trigger, right, of this mental health issue. So if you think that your identity and purpose and value is connected to playing this sport, and I take it away either by pandemic, or I take it away because I can't play anymore because I'm not good enough, or I got injured, you're going to have an issue of trying to redefine who you are. And some people do it that differently. And I think that was a fear factor that I had, definitely looking at what we do with our kids here at Ethos, that a lot of Black and brown kids, their identity in their family structure is, hey, you're going to go to Division I ball, Notre Dame, Cal, whatever, Michigan, you're going to go ahead and be a first round draft pick. You're going to be at Everson Wall. You're going to be a Tim Brown. You're going to save us financially. This is what your purpose is. And when COVID takes that away, where does this kid go? And how do you introduce himself to a better version of himself? What does that look like? How do you steer him into really looking himself in the mirror and say, well, let's look at the other dimensions that you have, that you've never been introduced to? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And so when nobody can really guide you through that process, you're kind of stuck in this place of feeling depressed, feeling like I have no value. And so that's why I definitely agree with, Dr. Brooks in regards to, this is a very complex, complicated issue that goes beyond just playing the sport and scoring touchdowns. There's another piece of this thing that's just killing us at the root. And so, do we have enough professional help in here to really deal with these issues? And obviously we don't in a lot of respects, unless you have the courage to really speak out and say, hey, I need help. But what about the kids that don't have the courage or can't really identify that they even have an issue, or they have the ego element? Oh, I gotta be tough. I can't let anybody know that I'm suffering here. And so there's a lot of different reasons why I think we see this issue even more so pop up. So that's my 2 cents.
Hey, Jay, I think Michael just brought up something really, really important there. It's the courage to speak up. We all went through that time frame, and I think a lot of people who are on this, and we're getting a lot of really great stuff from everyone who's on here with different things that we're addressing. But to finish up here with the mental health side, we were always told, you don't show any weakness. You don't show that you have problems. If you ever went to your coach and did, you were worried that maybe they might look at you funny from that point on.
Sure.
Where are we right now, and what are you seeing these things and how it's affecting some of these kids?
Well, it's very difficult situation. What everyone was talking about, Tim and Everson, about your own children and those situations. My youngest son was a graduating senior at William and Mary this past year, and he was awarded a 6th season. So, was getting ready for the coming season, was going to play, was going to be enrolled in school, just taking classes in graduate work, but then his conference and his school decided to opt out of the fall. So then, his question to me was, Dad, can you help me go somewhere else? So, it was, the question was, as a parent, do I even feel it's safe for him to participate? And I wasn't sure, but because I knew he wanted to play, I reached out to several of my colleagues over the course of time, and in the Mountain West, the Big Ten, the Sun Belt, things like that. He got offered 3 scholarships. 2 of the schools opted out and aren't playing right now. One of the schools wanted him to come, but the athletic director put a freeze on spending, so they wouldn't give him a scholarship. And he would have been playing this past weekend for one of the teams. So, as a parent, I was in the same situation that Tim was in and that Everson was talking about. Do you even feel that you want your child to do this? But as a coach, it's a double-edged sword of sitting there saying, yeah, they're going to play. No, they're not going to play. It's not safe to play. All the things that have come up. I have older friends who are, and I'm 60, right? And so I'm in that age group of, I'm not coaching right now, but at the beginning of the pandemic, I was coaching in the XFL, and we stopped because, people in certain teams were having positive tests. The Seattle team was having positive tests. We had played them the week before that all the outbreak hit Seattle because they were a top hotspot, right? And then next thing you know, we're getting ready to play a game Thursday night. We're going to play Saturday. We're doing our script. Jonathan, my brother, who was our head coach, talks to Oliver Luck and everyone in the XFL. They say we're going to play, but no one's going to come to the game. A half an hour later, the league stopped playing. It switched that quick. Yeah. So we went from the middle of our season to it being over. And then from there, we have gotten to this point,
Yeah.
And it's hard to fathom how quickly it has gone to this, but I can see it. I mean, this spring, I had never been at a football team where guys were wearing masks and gloves and stuff to practice. They thought it was the flu, right? Bad flu going around. And I mean, we had kids in team meetings with masks on, or guys would miss practice for a couple of days, and then they would come. I'd never seen guys wearing masks under their helmets to practice, but they were doing it and wearing gloves, and guys giving them a hard time. Well, go get a mask, you're coughing. So then this happened. A kid went and got masks, and he had been sick. And so he brought a bunch of masks for guys in the room, and they said, I'm not wearing that. You touched it. So it was, I mean, I'd never seen anything like that. And then the next thing you know, it's all over the country.
It's a tough. It is a tough thing to navigate, obviously, because of all things we're going through. And I'm reading here from our audience talking about self-identity versus athletic identity. and how difficult that is. And it doesn't mean that one has to supersede the other, but all of us have had to walk that path, done it with our families as well. I'm going to ask something else. It's a great question, I believe, from the audience about how the current professional athletes, how can they continue to leverage their power during this time to disrupt the current system, use COVID-19 as an opportunity for a hard reset in the athletic field. Do you feel like you're seeing some of that, Everson Walls?
Yeah, I do, Charles. When you're talking about, especially being in the Dallas area, the Cowboys, they maybe can't win a freaking game, but they do have power. That organization itself has power all over the world. And I have always been of the mindset to approach that person of power. To me, if you can get someone like a Jerry Jones to just make a statement and be responsible enough to make that statement. We all knew it as kids. If you have great power, then you should be responsible towards that power. And I think that instead of being quiet and instead of trying to help, just hope this thing blows over, I really think the Cowboys organization as a whole should be more vocal. You had the commissioner came out and basically apologized for past acts by the NFL. Well, all those past acts by the NFL of outright racism, they were going on way before Roger was probably even alive. So for him to apologize for them, I thought was great on his part, but it was incomplete because all of the owners should have been standing right there with him. And I don't recall one NFL owner that acknowledged what the commissioner said. So just like any other time, there's this cat and mouse game in regards to what we want to be accountable towards. And the NFL has always played that game. The NBA itself started off with problems like that, but eventually these young men, especially because most of them are of color, let's just be real, that's why they have advanced further, I think, than most other sports. But when it comes to football, you've got some of the more blue-collar, conservative owners there that will always put their organization first. I mean, of course, they love their players, but when it comes down to it and they have to make a decision, then that organization is going to come first.
Michael Davis, do you think that COVID has helped give voice to these players as well? I mean, I'm watching teams in bubbles in the NHL, and you don't think of the NHL with black and brown people playing it very much, yet a great amount of people there taking knees, making statements, taking stands, MLS soccer, WNBA, but a lot of that is happening during this time frame.
Right.
Wasn't happening before. Do you think that this has helped drive it because people have so much going on, so much pressure that they want to be a part of it now or be in front of it now?
Well, I think everybody said it in their own different way. I think COVID shut things down to make you stop. I think, Dr. Brooks said the same thing. Generation after generation, it's been a movement. It's been a process. And I think it's just a perfect storm that's developed. And so with this COVID shutting things down, it's like with the letter with the Pac-12 players, they were able to bring other elements to that letter, beyond just COVID. And so they were able to really dig in and understand, there's a lot more that I want to talk about. So the courage that they were able to see from other generations and staying on the backs of people that sacrificed, I did a lot of research during this time, personally myself, in learning about what the sacrifices were made prior to me. And that added more courage for me to step up and say, man, I need to say something. When I was playing for Coach Hayes, I probably wouldn't go in his office back then. Coach says, hey, man, get out there, man, shut up. Put your helmet back on, come on, right? But But as time went on, you start doing the research and you start talking to folks that are older and the generational wisdom, which I think we're all sharing here within the village. I think that's what's coming out. And I think along with that, like we said, that courage element, identifying things that are wrong and speaking up about those things. Before, we're worried about the backlash. We're worried about these things. Now we see from, like you said, from hockey to football to baseball, whatever it may be, all different types of folks. Like this movement is not just a Black movement. You have white, you have brown, you have yellow, they're all standing up, saying the same things. And so that's what I see in regards to the COVID, giving us an opportunity and a platform to really stop, look in the mirror, literally stop and start to do your own inventory about your own identity, your own purpose, right? I saw one question, getting off a little subject, but I think, the parents, they have a chance to look at themselves too and evaluate themselves and say, am I pushing my kid in the right direction or am I not? What can I do to help my son in this process? What am I missing as mom and dad in this process? Am I putting too much pressure on my son? Am I kind of locked into being lost in this identity crisis myself as a parent? How can I recalibrate my thought process in this deal? So I think definitely COVID's definitely done that.
And we've seen that pressure, and I would go back to when we talked about the Big Ten parents protesting. Some people thought that was the pressure. This kid has to play. Got to go make the money. Got to get into the draft. You're keeping that from me and my family. All those things that kicked in. Tim Brown, you've articulated quite well the dangers that are faced out there because of what you have in your own household. People that you love and care about who may be more susceptible. How do you keep them safe yet allow yours to go out and live and do other things as well? You already talked about how difficult it is to navigate it. What would you tell people on trying to get out there during this crazy time, but you still have people at home that you're that concerned about?
The only unfortunate thing about this is you are relying on other people to do the right thing, right? It's not just about what you do in your household. You're in this case, you're looking for 65 other families to be doing the same thing that you're doing. And that's where the problem comes in, and the school is doing as much as they can. They're testing the kids 2-3 times a week, trying to make sure that everybody is healthy. And so the numbers have gone down, right? I mean, as far as the football team, they had a big outbreak in June. And, as far as I know, the last month or so, they've only had 2 kids that test positive. So it makes you feel a little better that the kids are locking in and understand that if they want to go out and party, then that probably could mean their season is going to be over with. But so from that standpoint, it's you feel a little better. But I'm not comfortable. As an athlete, you always want to be in control of the situation, and in this case, I'm not. Because I am relying on other people to do the right thing, and if they don't, that could mean I could have a problem in my place, and that. Quite honestly, is very scary.
Yeah, and my hope is that all of us want to do the right thing most of the time, right? So, guys, we have 4 minutes left in this. So what I want to do now is get a last word from all of you, any quick advice that you can have, because we've got a hard out at the top of the hour, okay? So, Michael Davis, you helm this thing. Any last thoughts very quickly so we can get to each of the panelists along the way?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for coming out. Coach Hayes, definitely father figure, uncle, being special in a space where I felt I can always talk to a coach like that about these issues. So if I was feeling depressed or feeling a certain way, I always had a guy like that in my corner. Obviously my brothers, Tim and Everson, thank you guys. Obviously your stories mean a lot in what you guys have done. Scott, man, you're awesome. You handle your business and definitely put a lot of perspective into this thing. So my whole hope and prayer is that we continue to have these tough conversations, to be able to have this village and this generational wisdom that I think that allows us to go forward, to learn from one another. And I think if we're honest with one another, I think at the end of the day, we all had a village within ourselves that really helped us get to where we got to. And I think we can do the same thing with the people that are listening that may not have that village of influence. And I think we're all doing that in our own right. So I want to thank you guys for doing what you're doing.
Okay, we have less than 2 minutes. Coach Hayes, give us something quick, please.
I just want to say thank you to everyone for having me on. It's great seeing all you all. It was really enlightening listening to everyone. I just pray that everyone stays healthy and that this virus gets under control and everyone is smart about what they do going forward.
Dr. Brooks.
So I think what I would love to leave, and again, thanks, Mike, I really appreciate us reconnecting, and I appreciate this platform. Thank you, Charles, for moderating. It's great to be with these great men and coaches and so on. You know, I think that this is a great opportunity for us to educate ourselves, as Mike has said, and for us to reiterate that our kids have more value than what they do on the field. Right. So when we look at this identity and identity foreclosure, what we know is we're not getting to our kids early enough to show them and expose them to other things that they might do, that they might become, and really pouring into them that they have much greater value. So let's make sure that we take that time and show our kids more. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to be closer, social distancing, but also we've had social re-engagement if we've done it correctly.
Awesome.
We're almost out of time. Everson?
Hey, I just want to thank everyone for signing on, all the comments from down below, everyone that signed in. And hey, Doc, I've never had a conversation with an intellectual before. Mike tries to do that, but he fails miserably. It was good to talk to you, man. Thanks for participating.
Appreciate you.
Hey, I don't have anything to say. I was going to give my time to Dr. Brooks because I want to hear him. So God bless you guys. I just hope everybody do the right thing, man. That's what it's all about.
Listen, we all wanted to hear from all of you, and we did. I can't thank all of you enough. Thank you for allowing me to be a small part of this. I want to thank everyone who checked in with us, who was on with us today. Sorry we didn't get to every question, but there's a lot of great stuff here in the chats. If everybody can refer to it at some point, Michael and Everson and Tim, you guys at Ethos might be able to respond to some of this and point out some other things in some chats down the road. But above all, with everyone, continue to educate yourselves and continue to educate each other, continue to care about each other. We'll find our way through this thing. And boy, I'm loving watching how people are emerging through all of this, because we're in a time frame that frankly, I wasn't sure I would live to see this time frame. And we're seeing it now. These youngsters are inspiring the heck out of me during the most difficult time trying to live that I've experienced in my 55 years. So I thank all these youngsters who are showing us the way, and I thank Ethos for giving us this opportunity. I thought it was great. Michael, all the best. Jay, all the best. The good doctor, Tim,
Thanks.
Everson. Appreciate you guys all, and appreciate everyone who tuned in and checked in with us tonight. I think it'll be posted on Facebook at a later time if you want to refer back to it. Take care, everyone. Good night.